The Transform Your Mind radio hour is a journey through the mind, offering fresh approaches to old problems that plague the African American woman and youth. Host Myrna Young, life coach, and Arifa Yusuf, social worker, discuss topics such as relationships, depression, the single life, how to supercharge your marriage, poverty mindset, and more. Tune in every Wednesday at 5 p.m. and transform your mind to transform your life.
Welcome to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and today I am taking a break from my co-host, and I am speaking with one of the sponsors of the show, author Kimberley Busey Lewis. Kimberley is the author of the book, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal. And our conversation today is going to be around the topic, getting your seat at the table. Welcome, Kimberley.
Welcome, Myrna. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for not only being a sponsor, but being willing to share with us how we can get a seat at the table. All right. So let me tell you a bit more about Kimberley Busey Lewis. She is the president and CEO of Goodwill Industries of East Texas and has more than 19 years of executive-level nonprofit and business experience. She holds a bachelor's degree from the College of Clarkson, South Carolina, and a master's degree from Marshall's University in Huntington, West Virginia. She's also a certified executive coach through Goodwill Industries Executive Development Program. At the national level, Kimberley is currently the chair of the Goodwill Industries International Diversity and Inclusion Committee and a former member of the Goodwill Industries International Board of Directors and former chair of the Conference of Executives. She's a member of the Forbes Magazine Nonprofit Council and a frequent online contributor. Kimberley is a published author of 2 books, a historical novel entitled The Fourth Generation, and her recent book, which we will discuss today, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal, Building a Culture of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Impressive bio, Kimberley.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Before I bring Kimberley on and ask her the first question, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Master John Atwood. Do you have unfiled tax returns? Has the IRS sent you a letter? Business Master can help you. Contact Business Master John Atwood at 210-816-1035 or on the web at www.businessmasteratwood.com and let the Business Master help you with your IRS returns. That website again is businessmasteratwood.com. All right, awesome. I want to thank Master John Atwood and all our sponsors for this episode. Remember to support the advertisers who support our show. All right, Kimberley, you're on. So my first question to you is, how did you come to become passionate about diversity and inclusion for women of color? What's your story?
Well, I first really started thinking about this when I was a reporter, a very young reporter, at the Post and Courier newspaper in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was the only female reporter for a short time, and then there were a few others who came on, but we were certainly the minority within this 600-person company. And what I was struck by is that there were so many decisions that were being made that we would complain about, but none of us had a seat at the table. And I realized that if I didn't have a place in the room, that I was both invisible and silent. So it didn't matter how much I complained, how much I liked what was going on or didn't like what was going on or simply just didn't understand it because I was not part of the discussion.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where your passion was born.
Yeah.
I was reading something today when I was researching this topic, and that's exactly CNN wrote a column on this same topic, and they were talking about Congresswoman Harris, and that's basically what they're saying, that the women are invisible and they have no say. And when they speak, no one listens. So yeah, so I understand that totally. All right, so from that, what else happened after? How long did you stay there, and how did you get to Goodwill and all that?
Well, I stayed there really about 12 years, so it took me a while to kind of get that awakening. So many times I think that, like myself, we are just fortunate. And we feel like we're fortunate and blessed to be where we are. We don't want to stir the pot. And I just increasingly became more and more, I guess, of a little rebel. And I said, if I'm not going to be able to get to the place that I need to get to here, then I just need to leave and go somewhere else. And so I ventured out actually to write my first book, and I was scared to death. Because, here I am, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to leave my job. I took a leave of absence to do that, but it was really a step of faith. And in writing the book and doing the research, it's really about my family. I became energized when I interviewed older relatives, my mother and great aunts who were already in their 80s and 90s at the time, became energized by their tenacity. I knew that we had a lot of strong men in my family, and my eyes were really open to the strength of the women and how they held the farms up, how they held the businesses up, how they held the family and the men of the family up and brought us all together so that I could have a decision as to whether or not I wanted to stay or leave. I didn't have to stay. And so that really kind of awoken something in me to say, you know what, I can do this. I really can. So things kind of went on from there, and I say I stumbled into the nonprofit arena by my volunteer work. I was volunteering and I was working on the book, and one thing led to another. I got to a small organization that was run by a black woman who became my mentor. And she took me under her wing, and I was just volunteering, and pretty soon it turned into a job. And she taught me so much about just strength and tenacity and making your voice count. So
what was the organization?
It was called Family Assistance Management Services, Helen Singletary. Helen Singletary was the first black female broker, insurance broker. She had been a school teacher, and she built quite a nest egg with her husband. They owned several pieces of property in Charleston. She's still living. She still owns property. And she became a broker. She started several businesses, an insurance company, a computer training clinic, all kinds of things, because she had a passion for helping people and helping people to gain some financial independence.
Okay, yeah. Yes, the black community definitely needs that. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, so she mentored you, got your feet wet on the nonprofit arena, and but it sounds like you have a seat at the table at Goodwill. So
I certainly do.
Okay. All right, so that's basically why you wrote the book, to tell others how to get there. Okay, got you.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
all right. So, no, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But anything else you want to share as far as your background? You didn't tell us anything about your childhood and your upbringing, or other than the fact that you mentioned that you interviewed your family. I'm still not getting a clear picture of, how you were brought up, or, I'm not even getting a clear picture of whether you're black or white.
Okay, I would be happy to tell you that.
Okay.
And this is really a very piece that I didn't even think about until I was much older. But I was born in 1964.
Okay.
September 1964, a month after the Discrimination Act. And my parents had not long moved to Charleston. And all of my siblings, I had one brother and two sisters, they had all been born at home in the country by a midwife. So me being the last child, and in Charleston, and of course now it's illegal for public places to discriminate, my father thought, well, I will take my wife to this nice hospital for my fourth child to be born. He didn't think anything about it. So my mother was in labor. He rushed us down to this hospital, the Medical University of South Carolina, and by this time she had begun to hemorrhage. I was a breech baby, and he didn't know what was going on. And it was pouring down raining, and he got her into the emergency area, into the lobby, and he started screaming for the doctors to come and help. They turned, looked at them, and turned their backs. And these were all white doctors and nurses. And so he ran up to them, and he said, my wife is bleeding. You've got to help her. And someone said, just sit down. We'll get to you. And he thought, no, that's not good enough. So without even thinking twice, he wasn't even thinking about the car. He scooped her up, put her in a wheelchair. There was a black hospital, McClellan Banks Hospital, that was just a few blocks away. In the pouring down rain, with her gripping to life on that wheelchair, he ran full speed to McClellan Banks Hospital, pushed her up into the emergency area. And as soon as they saw, of course, she was drenched in blood and rain. They scooped her up and rushed her into the emergency room and delivered me. The doctor who delivered me was from South Africa. And he named me Kimberley after the Kimberley diamond mines.
Oh, really? Okay. So I'm gathering you are African American.
Yes, I am.
All right. You still didn't even say that. My goodness. Wow.
I thought that was a given. You know what? Because,
well, honestly, it was a given in the story, but you didn't say it out loud. Yeah. White women don't have to ask for a seat at the table. They're just automatically given that. So, they're invited into the room. Well,
we're peering through the windows,
I know.
They have their struggles, but it's not the same.
It's not the same, but you're right. I mean, it could be a man world, and women, like Kamala Harris. Well, she's not. I'm not even sure what she is, but anyway, I think she's white, but she still has a problem with getting a seat at the table because it's a man's world, in the politic world and all that. And we can even go as far as to say as one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton didn't win was because she was a woman. So, I mean, getting a seat at the table, the African American women have it harder, but the Caucasian women, still play in the same arena, trying to get a seat at the table. So that's awesome. Right. I couldn't pick it up from your dialect or even from your name. That's why I had the question. And your book doesn't have a picture on it. So I had to come right out and ask.
That's okay.
All right. Well, that's good, Mia. Your story was quite good, but it sounds like you were almost born in to do this work, because of the way you were born in your family, and and your father obviously relayed the story, because you tell it very well. You tell it like if you knew that you were there, and obviously you're being delivered. So you had to have heard the story. All right. So that's awesome. All right. So we've got a good intro into who you are and your background as far as why you're passionate about diversity and inclusion. So my next question is, what made you write the book? So we went through. You wrote the first book. I think I'm almost getting the answer to this question without even asking it. But I mean, if you can, shed some light on certain aspects of why you decided to write the book, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal, Building a Culture of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
That really is steeped in my work with Goodwill.
Okay.
In 2012, one of the female black CEOs, had retired, and I remember being at a large national meeting, and we were having a discussion about the lack of a pipeline. Now, it wasn't a pipeline of diversity; it was just a pipeline of talent. And I'm in a room with mostly older white males, all CEOs, and I thought to myself, are we blind? It's not just about having a pipeline of talent. We have to have a diverse pipeline. And so I stood up and I got to the podium and I said, if we're really going to talk about diversity, let's talk about all of it. And if you want to see how much diversity we have in the room, look at me. I'm it. And I said, you know what? And I'm tired of being it. And we have to do something. If anyone is going to wave that flag of inclusion, of equity, and of diversity, it should be Goodwill. And we're going to work to do that, and I will do my part to bring that to pass.
Nice.
So it really began then, and we started a task force with a group of CEOs and started to study diversity and inclusion and equity programs with Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 100 companies, and looking at other nonprofits and who was doing it well, what were they looking at, what were the metrics, and how do you build that diverse pipeline? Because the main complaint that everyone was saying was, we don't see women of color, we don't see black men who are in positions. They don't apply for these particular jobs. And so, how are we supposed to attract them if we don't know where they are?
Okay.
So, pretty soon we began to work a little more diligently and work with a lot of different CEOs, and we came up with a plan, an implementation plan, and better than that, a business plan. Because it is good business. It's not just the right thing to do. It's good business. It makes business sense. And once we roll that out, then boards of directors and CEOs could see, oh, wait a minute, I'm missing out on some great ideas. I'm missing out on influence in communities that I really need in my business structure. So I need to be really intentional, and that's the key word. I need to be intentional about attracting and maintaining and keeping a diverse workforce, whether it is individuals who are Hispanic or individuals who are African American or LGBTQ or disabled or, not disabled, all of those different monikers. We recognize that all of that builds a table of diversity. So that's really, how it started.
That's good. That's excellent. So what does let's say that a company, because I worked for Office Depot, and, we had a diversity, just like you said, they had a diversity program, and and they understood, it was a political thing, and maybe, trying to help the community. But let's say that a Fortune 1000 CEO is listening to the show. Other than the fact that it's the right thing to do, how does it benefit the business? And is there a something substantial that they're going to be getting, other than the fact that they're being fair and operating justly?
Oh, hello?
I'm here. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Well, and it differs from different businesses, and there are a lot of different factors, and I'm going to pull out a few. If you look at a couple of different organizations, there's the leanin.org. They publish information, as well as the McKinsey study was published most recently in 2018, that talks about various business structures and gives examples. I'll give one Goodwill example is an example. As an example, one of my colleagues said that his Goodwill stores, he noticed that the prices of salvage, of the things that they couldn't sell in the stores and they could not recycle, was going up. And so he asked the question, well, what is it that's making the trash cost so high? Because we recycle as much as we can. And they said, oh, it's all of this metal, it's all this cast iron. And he said, cast iron? What are you talking about, cast iron? And he said, we've got all these rusty cast iron pans. So he brought it to his leadership team, and they took it to their teams. And one of the middle managers said, well, why are we throwing away cast iron pans and, frying pans? And they said, well, they said that they're rusty. And she was Hispanic. And she said, well, wait a minute. In my culture, we reuse those, and if we just clean them up a little bit and put them on the shelf and advertise it, they will fly off the shelves. And so I said, okay, well, give it a try. Let's see. And that's exactly what they did. And they do. They fly off the shelves. Not only do Hispanics use them, I cook almost exclusively, and I know that my mother and grandmother always cooked with a lot of cast iron. And, if you know how to treat the cast iron, they're just wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful for cornbread and everything else, I'm telling you. So, it became a great seller, and he reduced the weight because they're heavy. The weight,
right. Okay.
Likewise, I also studied Clorox, and Clorox has been long named as one of the diversity leaders. One of their products, they had a question. There was a Chinese holiday that was coming up, and they were looking at how do we market certain things. One of their junior, wasn't even really a junior executive, one of their junior marketing individuals came up with just changing the color of the Brita pitcher to red in recognition of the Chinese New Year. And the Brita pitchers flew off the shelf. That's all they did. They changed it to red. And so if you don't have those diverse perspectives within your company, these are things that you wouldn't, that just might not come to mind. You wouldn't even think about it because it's not part of your culture.
Yeah, I think I get it now. So so for someone, if I were to unpack that for a business person that's listening, not only are they it's just and it's inclusive and fair, but at the same time, different cultures bring different things to your business. And if you have someone that's diverse, they're able to reach to people that you can't reach yourself because you don't know the culture. So that's actually pretty good and actually very true. Very true. Right. Okay. Awesome. All right. So beautiful. We have a great start. Let's take our first break to hear a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, Kimberly is going to tell us how to get a seat at the table like she did. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked. We'll be right back.
Have you ever run out of gas on a deserted road with no cell service? Or got lost on a solo hiking trip? I Am Canary is your answer. When you travel, you deserve the peace of mind. IamCanary.com will send digital messages when you can't do it yourself. This service can also be vital if something happens where there is a cell phone signal, but the person can't call for help themselves because they have either lost consciousness, seriously injured, or other reasons. I Am Canary will send alerts to family members, local professionals, or emergency services. A simple membership plan is free, and with it, you are never completely out of touch. So join today and feel safe to adventure worry-free with IamCanary.com. That is IamCanary.com.
Attention real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Did you know that real estate investors are a primary target for lawsuits? According to the National Survey of the Court data, 25% of Americans risk being sued in their lifetime. However, if you are a real estate investor, you have a 95% chance of being sued in the next 20 years. Leafy Legal Services helps you protect your assets and strategically grow your business and wealth. Leafy Legal Services are experts at the Series LLC and Delaware Statutory Trust, two of the newest and most ideal legal structures for real estate investors. Leafy Legal Services have the most personalized and affordable solutions for setting up LLCs. Property owners are always at risk when it comes to their assets. Anonymity is so important. If you own just a rental house and you own your home, you have to protect yourself and your properties from any potential legal issues. Leafy Legal Services have the right solutions to make sure you are happy and feel secure. They offer cost-effective documentation that suits their clients' needs. For a free consultation and ebook, visit LeafyLegalServices.com. They are waiting to hear from you. LeafyLegalServices.com.
Have you ever wished that you had the information to elevate the conversation at work on how to build a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, now you do. With my newly published book, A Seat at the Table, or Part of the Meal, by Kimberley Busey Lewis. This book will give you examples of intentional efforts that level the playing field and yield dividends for your career and your company. The book can be found on Amazon, A Seat at the Table, or A Part of the Meal by Kimberley Busey Lewis, or on www.motivationalmuse.com. So get your copy today and get your seat at the table.
Don't wait until sexual temptation attacks you before you see it as a formidable force which seeks to destroy you. Its insidious tactic is designed to enslave you into sexual sin and keep you locked in erotic desires. How you perceive sexual temptation in your life determines how well you will overcome its deceitful force and walk in total victory. Naked and Ashamed, The Battle of Sexual Temptation is a Christian self-help book that explains what sexual temptation is and gives you biblical scriptures on how to control your sexual desires and unnatural urges. Readers will learn how to refrain from overreacting and falling into sexual bondage. So, put on your seatbelt and get ready to be free from all your unwanted sexual desires and temptations. Order Naked and Ashamed, The Battle of Sexual Temptation today. Written by Sheila Fields. Now available on Amazon.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and today our guest is Kimberley Busey Lewis. She is the author of the book, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal, and we are discussing today getting your seat at the table. In our first segment, Kimberley gave us a background of how her work with diversity and inclusion started and how she became passionate about it. And, listening to her, we can say it's a man's world, especially in, corporate America. We're all, as women, we're trying to change that. And Kimberley, with her book, is trying to bring some attention to the topic. So right now, I just want to say that the first time that I heard the phrase, I want to get a seat at the table, and I've heard it several times since. I heard Gabrielle Union say it, that she's just going to make her own table, because a lot of the the black actresses in Hollywood go through the same problem. It's not just in in the boardrooms or in corporate America. But the first time that I was aware, it came to my attention that you can say it like that, which is a really nice phrase to sum it up. I was coaching one of my clients that had a PhD. She's a black lady, and she had her PhD, and she struggled, going through a lot of challenges, as a lot of black women do. And she got herself educated, got her a PhD, and she expected to get a seat at the table. And when the seat wasn't offered to her, or she had to still fight and claw her way, it was very disappointing to her. So that's the first thing she said when she came into the coaching conversation is, she wants to get a seat at the table, and she wants to set a plan to get her seat at the table. So, that's where I heard that phrase the first time. So, Kimberley has a seat at the table. So what advice would you give to women who are hitting the glass ceiling and not able to get a seat at the table? You can talk about all women, and then maybe you can, tailor it to the African-American woman.
Certainly. Thank you. Absolutely. This is not a new term, and unfortunately, we have been absent from the room, not even invited into the room, much less the head of the table for quite some time. And women in general have been hitting that ceiling for quite a long time. I've heard that men are hired based on what their hiring manager or that supervisor thinks that they can do. They're hired on potential. And women are hired or promoted based on performance. And it's just the way, and I'll tell you why it is. That's just the way it is. It's that way because the majority of the seats are already held by men, predominantly, white males. And they look for men who look like, act like, came from where they come from.
Right.
And so, they can see themselves in that person. So they'll look at a young guy and, he reminds me of me when I was that age. And he will give him an opportunity. But when a man walks in the room, a black man walks in the room, or a woman of color, there's no connection there. So how do we get that connection? I always say it's all about relationships. Everything that you do is about relationships, and it's about networking. Now, if you, I didn't grow up playing golf. I didn't grow up in the country club scene or anything of that nature. And quite honestly, my parents did not have that kind of network that I could, avail myself to. So I was very uncomfortable, and I had to, first of all, get okay with being uncomfortable. So I would go to places and do things that I didn't see anybody else who looked like me there doing. When I was in college, I was a fine arts major. And so as a fine arts major, they would have opportunities for you to go to the theater, to go to the opera. You could serve, as an usher or, get free tickets, or sometimes the sponsors who were all wealthy, individuals would have some shindig at their house. Well, there's not places I would normally go to, but I made myself go because I knew that there were opportunities there that I wouldn't get in the places that I was going to. My dad was a Baptist pastor, and so those weren't opportunities I was going to get at the Black Baptist Church. Those, there were other opportunities, but not those. So I would go. I would get me some cheese and crackers, and I would force myself to go over and talk to somebody that I didn't know, and I didn't know most of those folks. And so I would just force myself to talk to them until I became somewhat comfortable, just walking in the room, having a conversation, and gaining some knowledge about where they come from and their lifestyle and what they do. Being a theater major, that was just something that kind of came natural to me. Well, I didn't do summer stock and go to New York for the summers and do all that stuff, but they did. And so I would sit there and just kind of look in amazement.
Listen, and learn. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
But pretty soon, they knew my name. So when it came time to do something or for some summer job opportunity, they'd say, oh, I know somebody who I think would be interested in this. And then I would get the call. And that's really, that's how we do everything. It's really about those relationships, making yourself okay with being uncomfortable in those settings. Oftentimes I hear women talking about, women in this country as well as abroad, talking about, all the deals are made before I even get to work the next morning. Well, that's because they are either going out to drink and you're not invited, and they're making those deals then, or they're going to the golf course on the weekends and you're not invited. So, if you have to take up golf, do that. If you have to invite yourself, get a babysitter or whatever, invite yourself to dinner out in the evenings with the fellas, because by the time you find out about something, it's already a done deal. It's already been handed off to someone.
Yeah. Well, there's tons of movies that everything that you just said there. I've never been in personally in that kind of world, but you can live it through the movies. And I'm thinking of the movie that Taraji Pearson just did the other day, where she started hearing men talk because they were keeping her out of this exact same thing. They were keeping her out. The men would get together and play cards, and she wasn't invited, and then, and all the deals will be made while they were socializing, and she just invited herself to these things, and then she can actually start hearing what they're thinking of and talking about. And so there's a lot of movies that that talk about that. Even the one that's called Think Like a Man and Act Like a Lady. Exactly. And they're all usually black movies. They're showing you how to do it, just exactly what you just said. You've got to, in order to be included, you've got to make yourself included. If you keep yourself out, then they will be happy to keep you out as well. So and right, go ahead.
Well, and they even make the excuse, that's not interesting to them, or they've got to go home and take care of the babies,
Right.
Well, you got babies too, so who's taking care of yours?
Well, that's normally what they do to women, because they're saying, I have to give the man this promotion because the woman can't stay late. She's got to go and take care of her baby, which is really ridiculous. You know what I mean? Why are you punishing a woman because she's working outside the home? She should be Superwoman, because when she leaves work, she's still got more work to do, But that's how that is. Okay, so I think what you're saying is that networking and relationships are very important. But let's get back to a corporate company like Goodwill, or you mentioned Clorox, or any of the big companies that have that are practicing diversity and inclusion. So women that are working at these companies, what did they do to make sure that they're part of the conversation?
Well, I think the first thing is exactly that. They insert themselves into the conversation, not necessarily in a pushy way, but you know, so many times, many women I find will not even apply for certain positions or apply for certain key roles in a project because they think that they have to have all of their ducks in a row. They have to have 3 or 4 degrees. They have to, particularly women of color, well, you know, I'm not quite ready for that. I have to get this certification. I have to get that certification. And their boss doesn't have those certifications. You know, the guys who see the same opportunities, they just assume that, hey, I'm good at what I do. I know I can do it. I'll fake it until I make it, and they try.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
and the good old boys hire them anyway.
Exactly, because they're operating on potential and not performance.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Okay.
You know,
go ahead.
The other thing I would say is to all women need a mentor, and all women need a sponsor, and those are 2 different things. A mentor is someone that you can talk to about your fears and your aspirations, who can give you sound advice so that you can talk through some of the issues that you're having and have a plan of attack, if you will, or a plan of advancement. Your sponsor is going to be that person who's going to make sure that you're invited to that meeting. They're going to take you under their wing. They're going to make sure that there's a place for you, that your conversation is part of the discussion as a greater portion of the meeting.
Okay. But do people have mentors and sponsors at work, or do they have to get these outside? Like the mentor sounds like a coach, and we all know everybody should have a coach, but most people can't afford a coach. But so where do they find these mentors and sponsors? Inside the organization or outside?
It can be either or. You know, the mentors many times are individuals who are not necessarily tied to the organization. Your sponsors typically are those. And to be quite honest, a lot of times your sponsors are white males who really want to see some diversity. And they may not come out and say that, but they respect your ideas. They think that you have something to say, and they do it in such a way that their cohorts, their male counterparts, really don't even realize that they're serving as your sponsor. And I experienced that and didn't know it, that I was experiencing that. When I was a young reporter, I had one of the editors that I was working with, and he would just talk to me about different opportunities. And, you know, I was newly out of college, really didn't think very much about it, and then found out, and I was working as a part-time individual at first, and I was still in college, and found out that he wrote a letter, unbeknownst to me, on my behalf for me to become a reporter and to go through this special minority newspaper workshop that they were sponsoring. And, you know, I had no idea that he was even watching my work, knew what I was doing, you know, so he was really a sponsor. He held that door open for me.
That's nice. And I think the same thing happened with Oprah. So listen, Black women, go out there and find yourself a white male sponsor. Listen, there's nobody else can open that door as wide as a white male sponsor, you know, because they're an excellent gatekeeper. So, you know, if there's one available to you, then definitely you should definitely you know, use that resource. All right, so as we're getting almost to the end of our show, let's take our second break. And when we come back, Kimberley is going to tell us how to get a copy of her book. And we'll ask her one last question about diversity and inclusion. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Have you ever run out of gas on a deserted road with no cell service? Or got lost on a solo hiking trip? I Am Canary is your answer. When you travel, you deserve the peace of mind. IamCanary.com will send digital messages when you can't do it yourself. This service can also be vital if something happens where there is a cell phone signal, but the person can't call for help themselves because they have either lost consciousness, seriously injured, or other reasons. I Am Canary will send alerts to family members, local professionals, or emergency services. A simple membership plan is free, and with it, you are never completely out of touch. So join today and feel safe to adventure worry-free with IamCanary.com. That is IamCanary.com.
Attention real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Did you know that real estate investors are a primary target for lawsuits? According to the National Survey of the Court data, 25% of Americans risk being sued in their lifetime. However, if you are a real estate investor, you have a 95% chance of being sued in the next 20 years. Leafy Legal Services helps you protect your assets and strategically grow your business and wealth. Leafy Legal Services are experts at the Series LLC and Delaware Statutory Trust, two of the newest and most ideal legal structures for real estate investors. Leafy Legal Services have the most personalized and affordable solutions for setting up LLCs. Property owners are always at risk when it comes to their assets. Anonymity is so important. If you own just a rental house and you own your home, you have to protect yourself and your properties from any potential legal issues. Leafy Legal Services have the right solutions to make sure you are happy and feel secure. They offer cost-effective documentation that suits their clients' needs. For a free consultation and ebook, visit LeafyLegalServices.com. They are waiting to hear from you. LeafyLegalServices.com.
Have you ever wished that you had the information to elevate the conversation at work on how to build a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, now you do. With my newly published book, A Seat at the Table, or Part of the Meal, by Kimberley Busey Lewis. This book will give you examples of intentional efforts that level the playing field and yield dividends for your career and your company. The book can be found on Amazon, A Seat at the Table, or A Part of the Meal by Kimberley Busey Lewis, or on www.motivationalmuse.com. So get your copy today and get your seat at the table.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio hour and podcast. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and today we are speaking to Kimberley Busey Lewis. She is one of the sponsors of this episode and also the author of the book, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal. And our topic today is getting your seat at the table. So as we wrap up, Kimberley, I want to ask you, what do you think will finally tip the scales in favor of men and women of color as far as getting a seat at the table or even being invited in a room? I like what you said about that. So what do you think has to happen politically or in the corporate culture? What is your take on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's already happening. It's happening too slow for most of us, certainly. But I am asked quite often about gaining diversity, building pipelines of diverse talent, for profit and not for profit. I also do some executive coaching and conduct workshops on this subject. And very seldom, I'll tell you, probably not a week goes by that I'm not somewhere and someone is asking me, well, how do I build a diverse board? How do I get a diverse staff, leadership staff? Where can I find this person or that person?
Nice. So where do you think, before you go on, so why do you think this conversation is changing? What is the trigger? What's happening?
Well, there's a couple of different things happening. Number one, and some folks call it the browning of America. Certainly, we are, people of color are the minority majority. It is already happening. In our communities, we're seeing many more individuals of color who are in various roles. They may not be in the C-suite yet, but they're already, within the workforce. So that's one thing that's happening, and there's really no choice. That's going to continue to happen. What we want to do is really just continue to push that forward so that people recognize that everybody has a contribution to make. Okay. And, it's not just those who come from this side of the track or that side of the track. It's what contribution of intellectual property do they have to bring into the room and bring to the table that is going to make that company or organization more successful. So that's one thing that's happening, and I predict within the next 15 years we're going to see an even larger shift than what we see now. The other thing that's happening is people really are speaking up. They're opening their eyes. They are, and you mentioned about the entertainment industry. My goodness, between the Me Too movement and pay equity movement for women and black women of color, these things were not necessarily hidden before, but they weren't being talked about at the rate that they're being talked about now. Yeah. And I'm seeing it all over the place. In fact, I was just reading some of the 2018 data from Women in the Workplace, which is a survey that McKinsey and Company did in 2018. And it says 41% of black women said they have never had substantial interaction with a senior leader about their work. And it's just 27% of the men have said that. That goes back to, what we talked about of not even being invited into a conversation. Right, so we're recognizing that that's an issue, but women of color and men of color, we have to push that envelope and, walk into that room, whether somebody invites you in or not, whether they want you there or not. I like that. I walk in and wait for them to tell me I have to leave. What? Huh? you mean this isn't for me? Oh, yes, it is. I'm right here. I like that. Yes. Well, if you're timid, they're going to walk all over you. Yes, you've got to be bold. Yes, you got to take it. I agree. Okay, awesome. All right, so tell our listeners, even though they're going to be hearing it because you're, you have your ad running on the break, but what else do you want to add as far as how someone listening can get a hold of you? You said you do some coaching and some workshops, so tell us first how they can get a copy of your book, and then also how they can reach you and what other things you do. Certainly. You can get a copy of my book on Amazon, A Seat at the Table or Part of the Meal by Kimberley Busey Lewis, or you can go to my website, motivationalmuse.com. That's motivationalmuse.com. And there you can not only purchase a copy of the book, but you can also see the various offerings of consultancy, executive coaching, working with boards of directors, those kinds of things. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, your website will have them all. Yes. Okay, well, listen, Kimberley, I want to thank you so much for stepping in on short notice to talk to our listeners today. My co-hosts were sick, and you stepped in.
thank you so much for being one of our sponsors. And I just want to, thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us about, getting a seat at the table, and not only sitting down, but we didn't expand on, a part of the meal. Because when you sit down at the table, I know, right? We forgot the next part. When you sit down at the table, you need to eat, right?
Exactly. Or as my mother would say, if you aren't up at the table, you will be dished on.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Right. Yes. You got to hear what's being said. Yes. So seat at the table and then partaking of the meal. So we just want to, thank you for coming on and, expanding our awareness on what we can do to definitely get our seat at the table, regardless of, where we're at, whether you're in corporate America, whether you're in the entertainment industry, any place, even in, any place that women are, in the minority as far as where men are. You're talking about in the political arena. We can talk about in the reporting arena, anywhere that it's male-dominated society. We women want to get a seat at the table and become part of the meal. So I want to thank you for definitely expanding our awareness on this topic. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the show. You can head over to blog.myhelps.us. You will see a transcript of this interview, as well as links to Kimberley's book and her website, and links to the other sponsors that sponsored the show today. Remember that we would like your support by, if you're liking the content that you're hearing on this program, please head over to iTunes and post a review, and as well as subscribe to your favorite podcast players. The show is also on YouTube and on all the podcast players. So in order for you to get new episodes every week, then please subscribe. Any last words, Kimberley?
Just thank you so much. I absolutely love your show. I appreciate the content that you have on your show, and you're just keeping your listeners informed. And information is power, and that's what we need.
Yes, that's true, and that's basically why I do it. I want to give all the minority women a seat at the table. It wasn't said like that, but that's my intention.
Well, you are doing it, my sister. You are doing it.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, and until next time, namaste.